was like, I wrote one song. And he was like, play me the song. And I was like, no. I can't play it in front of anybody.
Right.
This podcast is all about you, your journey in music, and we'll talk about the new singles you've been putting out.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I did read from Shaker Heights,
where I grew up.
Born and raised there?
All the first 18 years.
Wow. Okay, so my family's from Elyria, so it's about what? 40 minutes away or so? 45 minutes?
Right on. Another Ohio boy. I like it.
I was actually born and raised in San Diego, but my family was from there, and I almost was born in Dayton, actually. My mom was like 8 months pregnant with me when my dad got a job in San Diego, so they moved to San Diego. So they had only been there for like a month, but I'd go back every year to Elyria, and we'd go into Cleveland and everything else. So what was it like growing up in Shaker Heights?
You know, like the wonder years, I guess.
That's cool. And how did you get into music?
Oh God, so late. I got a guitar when I turned 30, and learned a few. Yeah, I always wanted to be an artist of some kind, but you know, started out in visual art, painting and drawing, and did that forever, and then got into screenwriting for 6 years, and then one day I just thought, I mean, I've always been a huge music fan. I mean, in college, that's all I spent my money on was CDs and going to concerts.
Okay. And I did read that. Did Dad buy you a guitar, or did your dad teach you how to play guitar or something like that?
Well, it definitely didn't teach me how to play. I don't come from a family of any creatives at all.
Oh, really? Okay.
But my dad did buy me my first guitar for my birthday. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you were into drawing and painting. That's what you went to school for?
Yeah.
Okay. And like, was that something that you just like, I'm curious to know, like, how did music kind of come in that late on? I mean, were you working in, you know, an industry where you're doing drawing and painting or screenwriting? And then how did you make the switch to songwriting?
I mean, I fell into it. I graduated college, and got a job teaching kids as an art teacher.
Oh, okay.
Like inner city kids who were on scholarship at this private school. Like all my kids were the inner city scholarship kids, and they were amazing. It was like the most fun job ever because they were so appreciative to be at this best school in Chicago, and like their moms were, a lot of them with dads out of the picture, moms, like fierce moms, you know, who were like getting their kids into this program, and anyway, I loved it. Unfortunately, I couldn't really pay my bills. It paid so little. Mm-hmm. And I ended up thinking, well, I love movies. I wonder if I could be a screenwriter. I've always loved to journal and stuff. And I don't know, I figured. So randomly, if you want to hear the long story, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the long story.
Okay. I was living with my best friend from high school. We shared an apartment in Chicago. He wanted to quit his job. He was working in finance, like trying to be a day trader. And we were both like, you know what, let's write a screenplay. Totally inspired, this was so long ago, totally inspired by Good Will Hunting and the two of those guys being like, we're best friends growing up, and we wrote a screenplay, and we watched the Oscar. Like, should we just try to write a screenplay and see what happens? So and we had no idea what we were doing. We never took a class. We never even read a book about screenplays. We bought like two of those scripts off the street, you know, like just to see, see like the format.
Sure.
And we were like, well, Chicago's freezing right now. It was wintertime, and we were like miserable in the winter. And we were like, let's go somewhere warm and someplace we've never been and go on an adventure and write a screenplay while we're traveling. So we flew to Cape Town, South Africa.
Whoa.
Yeah, we had.
It wasn't like you're like, we're going to go to Florida or, you know, California. You go all the way to Cape Town, South Africa.
We were where on the other side of the world is it summer? And he was like, you know, I've always heard Cape Town's supposed to be amazing, and summer there now. So we looked at tickets, and we were like, okay, the only thing that's expensive is the flight. And once you get there, like, I mean, it cost nothing when we were there. This was so long ago. I mean, a beer was $0.25.
Oh my gosh.
You know, we rented the sickest house with a pool overlooking the ocean for like 3 bedrooms for like $400 a month.
Oh my gosh.
Each of us paid $200 a month. And we were like, well, all right. And then I got a job teaching down there. So I was making a little cash, and we were living like kings. And we, you know, the class I was teaching was at this high school, but it was like an elective after like 3 p.m., like kids that wanted to stay and take it. It was a American history and culture class through film, and which I invented for myself. Like, I just walked into this school and was like, I know I had totally bullshitted, and was like, I'm a screenwriter, an American screenwriter. I'm here writing, and I'd love to teach a class and make a little money. I think I could add something to your curriculum. And the headmaster was like, yes, okay.
Wow. That was my next question. How did you get into the school? But you just walked right in there and said, hey, I got an idea.
Walked right in. And
Wow.
he was like, if you want to give a speech at lunch, you know, to the whole student body, like 9 through 12, you know, telling them what your class is going to be, and they'll get some credit, you know, some after school, you know, extra credit if they want to take it, and we'll pay you guys from, you know, from school. And I was like, all right. And like, all these kids signed up that, you know, they were just obsessed with anything American. So they were like, yep, yeah, okay. And we just watched films throughout the years and discussed them, and discussed American culture and history, you know, through those films. Like, you know, wouldn't be discussing like the 50s. We'd be watching Rebel Without a Cause, and we'd be, you know, in the 70s, we'd be watching Chinatown and discussing how it was about the Vietnam War, you know. Anyway, I digress. So we spent a year there, went on safari for a month. I mean, it was amazing, living like kings. And every day we'd, you know, the rest of the time we'd, you know, meet at a coffee shop and write all day and meet people, and had crazy experiences. It was awesome. And I don't know, like, I came back to New York. Well, I moved to New York, I should say, not came back to. And I was like, my friend at the time from college, at the time, was Harvey Weinstein's assistant.
Whoa.
So being brutalized. And
being
so
brutalized, yeah, I'm sure, yeah. Right?
Just like Kevin Spacey in like several movies, he's, you know.
Yeah.
So he was miserable, but he was like the only person I knew in the film business.
Sure.
So we came back with a screenplay, and I was like, all right, well, Jeff, here you go. Can you give me some notes, and maybe you can give it to Harvey? Anyway, so he would just periodically, he'd give me notes, and he was a film major, so that's what he wanted to do as well. So he was a great guy, and he would just sit us down and be like, okay, we got to do this, got to do this. And we just worked on it. And then eventually I realized this was not the script, you know, I wanted to make. And I started writing on my own without my friend. I just wanted to write my own script. So I did that for years. I lived in New York for like 6 years, and I sold 2 of them. I wrote 6 screenplays over 6 years, like 1 a year. Wow. while waiting tables and, you know, doing the starving artist thing.
Sure.
Living on $10 a day for food, like basically a couple slices of pizza from coins in the couch, and you know. And then eventually I sold 2 screenplays, 2 features, but they didn't get made by the companies that bought them. And it was so frustrating that I was getting so frustrated, and I was about to turn 30 years old. And I was like, man, I didn't really ever care about age, but like as a number until 30 hit. And I've never cared since. It's odd.
Just that 1 year, right? 30?
That year, it was something about 30. I don't know. It was like maybe societal pressures. And, you know, I went to Northwestern University, and it was a pretty good academic school. And all my friends from there went into stuff that was like, you know, finance or law or medicine or, you know, real professionals, not artists. So they were all like on their way and, you know, moving on with their life. And kind of, I just felt a little like I got nothing to show for myself. Like, anyway, so out of frustration, I got a guitar. My dad was like, "What do you want for your birthday this year?" And I was like, "You know what? I think I'd love to learn how to play the guitar just for fun." And so this guitar I wanted, you know, he got me this guitar, and it was all of a sudden my prized possession. And he was really cool about it. Like it was too expensive of a guitar for someone who never couldn't even play the G chord, you know?
Sure. It was, so you got a really nice one right out the gate.
Not like super nice, but I mean, usually people's first acoustic guitar is like $100.
Right.
Turns into plywood, you know, turns into firewood, you know. It's
right.
like,
Exactly.
Mine wasn't super nice, but it was nicer than that. It was certainly nicer than someone's first guitar should be.
Okay.
But I tell you, every kid who's ever asked me any advice, first thing I say is get yourself a guitar that's too nice for you.
Okay.
Because it makes you play it. You feel you're guilted into it. You'll play it so much more.
I like that. That's because my son was just asking for a guitar, and I was like, my wife's like, "We should get him one." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's just get him like the cheapest thing to see if he cares." But that's a great idea. Now it's like, hey, this thing's expensive. You got a really nice one. You better learn.
I would take him into a guitar shop and let him play a few, like up to a certain point of, you know, monetarily that you want to go.
Right.
And, you know, like
don't give him the SG right away.
Like an A, a B, and a C, but make sure the C is not more expensive than you want to go. Right. And then he's invariably probably going to choose the level C.
Of course.
And then battle him a little bit and be like, "But this is expensive. I mean, it's your first guitar. You don't even know how to play." And then make him understand that when he gets level C for his first guitar, he's going to be like, "You better play this thing, dude." Like,
I like that.
My dad didn't even say that to me. That was something I put in my own head. It was like, I need to learn this. I'm embarrassed when other guitar players see this and they're like, "You don't even know how to play and you have that guitar?"
Right.
I was embarrassed to own it. I was like, I better learn how to fucking play this thing. So that's one of the pieces of advice I give younger artists when they ask.
I'm going to ask you that same question again at the end, but I love that, that you got into that right away. Because that's, I like that. I've never heard that. I've done a lot of these interviews and no one's ever brought that advice in. I like that.
Yeah, I think the usual advice you're going to get from someone is like, play every day, man.
Yeah, don't stop.
I think that's about as pat of an answer as a journalist asking a musician, a songwriter, like, "So what comes first, words or the music?"
Oh, right. You're like, well, like, sometimes this and sometimes that.
Never heard that question. Only been answering that question every day for 16 years, but okay.
Sure.
Anyway, so I used the guitar. I had no inkling that I would become a musician. I just loved to sing growing up, like in the shower, in the car, and I love music so much.
But you were never in the chorus, choir, or music, like
a
band or anything like that? Oh.
I was never in a band or anything. I didn't grow up playing any instruments, but I was in the chorus as a kid.
Okay.
Know, like if you had to choose, in like 8th grade, you have to choose like whether to be in the chorus or to take an instrument or whatever. I like to sing, so I was in the chorus.
Sure, you weren't, but you weren't like in the chorus like every year through high school or musical theater. Yeah.
I wasn't that guy. I mean, I did a couple of musicals but only because I went to an all boys school and the girls' school would do the plays with us.
Oh, there you go.
So it was like one of the only ways to meet the girls from the girls' school. But it's not like I was ever a lead or, you know, anything
Right,
like
right,
that.
right.
In 10th grade. And then I was like, I don't like musicals at all. I'm not into this kind of music at all. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe had they done like Tommy or something, I would
Oh,
have been more
sure.
into it. I don't know. I bet you there's a lot of kids these days a lot of schools these days that are doing like their version of Bohemian Rhapsody and their version of like the Elton John, you know, the Rocket Man, and
Rocket Man,
like,
yeah.
all musical movies that have come out, like and Rent, and yeah, I don't know, just a bit more like, you know, music that maybe a 9th grader might be more want to sing.
Yeah.
Like the Pajama Game. Like, who wants to sing that? Anyway, so I was like, I don't want to, and I didn't want to be on stage. I didn't have that urge for the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to do creative things that were behind the scenes, painting and drawing and writing. And I would get shy, and I was like, I don't want to be like the guy who's like seeking attention, or I didn't want to be an actor.
Like this, you didn't want to have the spotlight.
No, that took at least 2 years on tour when I first started touring, playing music, to even be comfortable on stage. Even touring I was just like, you know, so painfully shy and nervous. I couldn't even open my eyes on stage. I couldn't talk between songs. My palms would just sweat. Like between every song, I just had to like dry my palms off on my jeans, and that's all you would hear. It's like, and then I'd say thank you at the end of a song and like dry my palms and play another song.
Wow.
Or I might say this song is called such and such.
Sure.
But anyway, so I get this guitar. I'm living in New York. And every time I'm sitting down at the cafe below my apartment in the East Village, it was on First Avenue between 3rd and 4th Street. I was living with my then girlfriend. We had lived together for 6 years. I met her in college. I stayed with her when I first moved to New York. And then we just started dating. And then we found an apartment together. And she was my first like real girlfriend, where I was like, we were saying I love you to each other. We lived together. And 6 years later, everything was real comfortable. And I liked her a whole lot, but I was like, this is not my person. I don't know how to get out of this relationship. How do you break up with someone? I've never done it before.
Sure.
So I had all these feelings going on in my head that I was writing screenplays that were like comedies. I don't know. There's something, everything I was writing, I was trying to sell. You know, I was thinking like, I want to pitch this to a studio. I'm thinking like big budget comedies. I'm imagining Ben Stiller and Will Ferrell and Adam Sandler and like big comedies, and trying to write jokes, and it just wasn't really me. I had all these like sensitive feelings about wanting to break up with this girl, and what do I do? And how do I become the real me? I feel like I'm an imposter. So the guitar at first was like a meditative device for me, just learning a couple like G, C, and D. And I'd strum and learn maybe a finger picking pattern and just play for hours on the couch, thinking about what I should do. So wait, am I supposed to be recording this audio?
No.
Oh, okay, good. There's something I have to do next that I have to record the audio on my phone. I was like, oh God, I forgot.
No, it's all good.
Okay, so I just I learned like a couple Dylan songs because he was all I was listening to at the time. Dylan, Paul Simon, Beatles, Elliott Smith, Nick Drake, all mellow, Neil Young, all this like singer-songwritery acoustic music. that's what I was listening to. And I was like, all right, well, if I learn a couple of those songs by those artists songs that have like just basically 3 chords and the truth,
Sure.
I'll learn a bit how to play guitar, and then I can sing along to those songs. And then I can, not just sit here as a meditative device and play, but I could actually like sit here and like sing Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, or some of my other favorites. Anyway, once I learned a couple of their songs and was singing along, I was like, I'm a writer. Why don't I just try to write my own lyrics, my own melody, And I wrote this one song. It's called Winter. First song I ever wrote.
Oh, wow. That's a big one for you too.
Yeah, I didn't know, obviously. I didn't think I'd ever play it for anybody. So one of my closest friends, from Northwestern, is Zach Braff, who was the star of Scrubs at the time.
Mm-hmm. He's done obviously a bunch of huge movies as well. Garden State. Yeah.
He and I were just basically like giving each other notes on our script. So what would become Garden State was that screenplay that I was giving him notes and he was giving me notes on mine.
Wow.
And that was like, he was about in second season of Scrubs by then. Mm-hmm. So he was living in LA by this time and had quit his waiting tables job. Mm-hmm. And he was in my apartment in New York. We were walking around and he saw this guitar sitting. I never told anybody that I played guitar. None of my friends. Like, the only one who knew was my girlfriend and my dad, my mom, my sister. But he saw the guitar in my, like, sitting by my couch, and he was like, "Whose guitar is that?" I was like, "Yep, Deborah's." It was my girlfriend at the time. And I said, "No, it's mine." And, sheepishly, "You play guitar?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, not really. I
dabble."
I was like, I wrote one song. And he was like, "Play me the song." And I was like, "No, I can't play it in front of anybody."
Right.
And this is my closest friend. And I was like, finally, he kept baiting me. And I said, "All right, man, but you got to turn around. Because there's no way I'm going to be able to like look at you." So he was like, "Fine." So he turns around. I play the song. He turns around and his eyes are like welled up with tears. And I was like, kind of shocked, like that there was that sort of reaction from anybody, let alone him. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, "You have to make a demo of that song." And I'm sure Bill Lawrence, he's talking about Bill Lawrence, who created Scrubs, the executive producer. He's a huge music fan. And he's like, "Bill's going to love that. Like, just make a demo of it. Just sing it into a mic, play it and sing it. Like, just like he's played it for me right now. And who knows, maybe he'll put it on the show." Like they're always looking for new music they can afford. Because at the time, licensing and syncs was not something that major artists were allowing TV shows and commercials to use their songs unless they paid them like millions of dollars.
Sure.
And a show like Scrubs wasn't going to pay, someone like, the Beatles,
right.
$10 million to use one of their songs, or Paul Simon song, that might cost $3 million. So they were always looking for people who kind of sounded similar that they could afford. Mm-hmm. And my stuff sounded similar to Paul Simon. So I made a demo of it. I sang it into a mic in my buddy's bedroom, another friend of ours that we went to college with, who was trying to be a musician, had a little Pro Tools rig in his bedroom, just like a 58 mic and his iMac, nothing, no gear. And I doubled my vocal, so it sounded like it had a little reverb, like Elliott Smith. I heard that he did that.
Okay.
And then I sang a harmony on top of it, and that was it. That was the track. Like no redoing anything, just
straight through. Wow.
And sent it to Bill. And 3 weeks later, Bill emailed me and was like, "Hey man, I love that song. I got the perfect spot for it on Scrubs. Can we use it? And I was like, what? What?
Wow.
Look up from my laptop trying to work on the screenplay that no one's ever going to buy. And I'm like, what now? Like on my first cell phone I ever had. And that's how long ago this was. I'm trying to date it for you.
I love it.
So this was like 16, 17 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, yeah, man. And I didn't even know anything. So they paid me enough. They paid me, I'm not going to tell you what they paid me, but they paid me enough to pay my rent for quite a while.
Wow.
More money than I had made in my entire life doing anything. And not like a ton of money, but like
right. A decent chunk of money.
Like the biggest check I had ever seen.
All right.
That from something that I created. And so I think a week later it aired, because the music is the last thing they put in a show. Mm-hmm. They finish everything, and then they temp in score, and they temporarily put in songs maybe they can't afford or whatever. And then at a few days before they lock picture, they find the song and they put it in. And so I'm sitting there with my girlfriend watching the episode, like a week later or something, and we're just looking at each other like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And it turned out to be like what Scrubs fans, it's like their favorite scene of the entire series.
Wow.
And it shut down the NBC. At the time it was on NBC, then they switched to ABC. At the time it shut down the NBC website after the show aired, from so many people trying to figure out what was that song, where can I get it?
Oh my gosh.
And so my buddy who I demoed that song in his room was like, he was like, let me make you a MySpace page. So you can at least put up the song. Uh-huh. So people can like
know who you are,
see a picture of you and listen to the song. Mm-hmm. And then I hit the ground running. People just started writing me. And so this was the first thing I ever did artistically, creatively, where the audience came to me and I didn't seek an audience. Mm-hmm. So I had been spending my entire life up until the age of 30, like seeking an audience in some way of like, I'm an artist in some way, in some capacity, support me. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And of course, the first thing that I ever tried that I didn't seek it out. I just did it for myself, like almost just writing a diary entry. Now, of course, it helps when your best friend hears it and is the star of a TV show and, sends it to the producer, whatever. But
how many times does a song make it into a movie or a TV show and no one cares, right? I mean, it's just like a soundtrack to what's happening.
A billion times now.
Right. That's what I mean. Like, for people to seek it out and try to find that scene, shut down the website, that says something about the song.
Well, that gave me some courage, some confidence. And my buddy called me and said, you got to move out to LA. Because at the time, New York, every band I'd go see, like in the small little haunts, we're just trying to sound like the Strokes.
Oh, okay.
There was that time.
Yeah. The time of the bands.
Everyone was just like, the acoustic singer-songwriter thing hadn't really hit so much yet. Mm-hmm. But the licensing world, that changed everything for the acoustic singer-songwriter. Because then Grey's Anatomy came around. And they just started using so many of my songs that every song they played in their episodes was like either a male or female with an acoustic guitar or piano, with songs that they wrote. And then they put a chyron underneath saying like, who wrote, and the name at the end of the episode. And you were like, sweet,
Right. Sure. Wow.
And that was like, everyone then moved out to LA. It was like the gold rush. Everyone in New York was just like, oh, there's gold in them hills.
Right.
And everyone came out to LA and was playing in a few different places, the Hotel Cafe, Largo, and just tiny little singer-songwriter haunts. And the music supervisors became the radio program directors from what like the 70s were like, they had all the power now. They were just like launching careers just by sitting in the Hotel Cafe or Largo, playing a little, 30, 40-minute set of your songs. You bring a burned CD and you leave it in your car. And every time I'd play, a music supervisor from some show would come up and say, what was the fourth song you played? I want that in Grey's Anatomy. Do you have a copy of it? And I'd run out to my car and give them a burned CD of that song. And like the next week it'd be in it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was the gold rush. Now it's changed because everything changed after about 10 years of that. Luckily, I got that 10-year window, like 150 syncs of my songs, like all my songs. Basically, I put out an album and every 10 songs show up in some TV show or movie or commercial.
Wow.
But like, it was still the time when like Paul Simon and those guys, the Beatles and Dylan, they still weren't allowing them to use their songs. Then everything changed with streaming because so much money was gone that all the publishing companies were like, yeah, so we're gonna slash our prices on that Paul Simon song. What do you need?
Yeah, right.
So now you can turn on your TV and every commercial you hear is like, it's either something brand new that a major label wants you to
is pushing, right? Yeah.
Or it's like, a Rolling Stone song.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the deal. That's pretty much.
So that first version of Winter that made it into Scrubs, that was just that version that you had cut at your buddy's house on that 58 Shure mic. Yeah,
well, my whole bedroom, the whole first album was a bedroom record. Like they were all demos that I just, and all the songs had been in TV shows and commercials by that time. So I just put it up on iTunes myself, that album We Were Here, and it immediately shot. I put it on MySpace like, hey, I put my album up on iTunes, and it shot to #1 on iTunes because people have been waiting. Where can we get these songs? And it started a major label bidding war because they were like, wait, this dude has written 10 songs. They're 10 demos. They've all been in TV shows and commercials. And he puts it up as himself on iTunes. And it goes to #1. Like, so all the major labels were like, and I chose Columbia because it was the label of Dylan and Springsteen and Paul Simon and Miles Davis. And so I was like, oh yeah, Columbia sounds cool. I knew nothing. I literally knew nothing. And they were like, so yeah. And I had the balls and the ignorance to just say, oh yeah, but you're not allowed to change the album.
Yeah, but you just got to throw your name on it and help distribute it. You're not touching these songs.
No, they didn't just distribute it. Like they assigned me an A&R guy who I don't even remember his name because I had never met him. And then I'll tell you a really funny story. I haven't told this story forever, but so I play for Columbia. I go to New York. I had a manager at this point because I needed someone to find. She's still my manager. I needed someone to find a way to do the deals with the TV shows and the commercials that all my songs were getting put in. So she she took me around to the major labels, and I played for the presidents and their staff in their rooms, and
that must have been nerve-wracking, I would think, since you said that
I had never even played live shows, really. I was terrified. But anyway, I ended up signing with Columbia. And at the time, the president of Columbia was named Steve Greenberg. And he was standing like as close as you are on Zoom to me, like front row. There was like maybe 30 people in the room. and he's right there. And I'm playing, I played maybe like 6 songs. They all clap, whatever. I go to the next label, they do the same thing. And my manager calls me and she goes, and I'm out in New York with my friends at this time, having a couple drinks down at the Mercury Lounge, going to see a band.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember what band I was going to see. At the time I was smoking cigarettes. It's been so long, but I'm standing between bands. I go out on the street having a cigarette, and this guy's standing next to me, and it's Steve Greenberg. And he looks at me, and this is like 3 hours after I just played in front of his face. And my manager calls, and we're like, and I had gone in, and she was like, all right, let's go with Columbia. I was like, yeah, let's go with Columbia. I signed to Columbia. Like, after I played for the labels, we ran back to the basement of Columbia Records, and she was like, let's get it done quickly before they
change their mind or something.
I can't believe the deal they're offering. You got it. She was a genius to get the bidding war.
Okay.
She was like, I can't believe this deal. So let's run back. So we ran to the basement. Like, their lawyer was there. My lawyer, she called a lawyer. Was like, all right, well, like literally just boom, 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 boom. Like, just sign. So then I run into literally 4 hours later, 3 hours, 4 hours later, see Steve Greenberg on the corner as I'm smoking a cigarette. And he looks at me, and I was like, hey, I was like, what's up? Hey, what do you think about that? I forget the band, because he must have been down there checking him out.
See him, yeah.
And he was like, yeah, cool, they're cool. And I was like, he's like, what do you think? And I was like, cool, I liked him. He goes, and this is dead serious. He goes, so what do you know about this guy, Joshua Radin? Do you think his music is good? I literally did a double take. I thought he was joking. I mean, I just met him. I just played for him 4 hours ago and just signed a huge deal to Columbia Records. And I quickly, within 10 seconds, realized he's not joking. He's looking at me going, he didn't know who I was. And I was like, that's me.
Oh.
So embarrassed. So I knew he was like, you know what I mean? Not like, oh, just kidding,
Oh, right.
I mean, his face was bright red, and I literally put my cigarette out, walked away, and called my manager and was like, we made a huge mistake. We made a huge mistake.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, well, I told her the story. And the next, I'm sure it had nothing to do with me, but I'm sure it didn't help. The next week, everyone from Columbia, from Steve Greenberg down, was fired. Everybody.
Oh my gosh.
Top down. All the A&R staff, everybody.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And A&R guy they assigned me, like everybody. And so I was a man without a home. It was crazy. And it's a terrible position to be in, because the whole new staff that gets brought in, it's a lose-lose for anyone. If I succeed, if I succeed, they don't get credit for signing me.
Yeah, they didn't sign you, right? So they're not going to really push the fact that you're there.
They're not gonna push me, because why would they want me to succeed? They want their signings to succeed, because if I do, that's just proof that the people who signed me
knew what they were doing. Right.
So anyway, and on the other side of the coin, if I fail, it's like, they're like, well, no big deal. We inherited him.
Right.
We could just drop, we'll just drop him, whatever. But I had a 6-record contract.
Oh, wow. Oh, so it wasn't like they signed you to a 1 or 2 record deal. You had like a huge contract with them. Wow.
The biggest new artist deal. Columbia was owned by Sony.
Uh-huh.
It was the biggest new artist deal that Sony had given in 10 years.
Wow.
And so when they made that deal, I was like, they were like, you're a priority.
Sure.
So, talk is cheap. Like, they put it, Anyway, long story short, they put out my album. It's not a radio record. There's no singles on it, quote unquote. You're not going to go to top 40 radio with Winter.
Right.
You know?
But you already had hits. I mean, if you already had all those songs and shows, they knew.
But at the time, and I'm sure it's major labels, I don't know, I haven't been on a major label in quite some time, but all they cared about was radio.
Okay.
And so, and they would like make a hit, like a radio hit. There was no radio hit on my record. There weren't even any drums on the record.
Sure.
So you could maybe a radio hit on like NPR, but that's not a quote unquote hit for a major label. A major label is like a K-Rock.
Right. If you get on, I've worked in radio for forever, 16 years, and it was
like they're like a major label, Columbia. That's got to be like, they had John Mayer at the time. They were like, we want another John Mayer.
Right.
We want, at the time, they wanted that Room for Spares record, like with Your Body's a Wonderland. Like they were like, we want that.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be the next. And if it's not getting played on those stations, like, thank you anyway. So they didn't get one radio ad, obviously. And I mean, they didn't put any money behind it either. I was a man without a home.
Uh-huh.
And so when I went in to make the next album, I made it the way I wanted to make it with the producer who produced all the Elliott Smith records, Rob Schnaff.
That's right.
And with his Elliott's microphone and in the same studio, XO and in Sunset Sound.
That's cool.
I turned it in. They were like, we don't really hear hits, quote unquote. And I was like, I don't make hits. I don't know what you want from me. That's not who I want to be. And they're like, well, we can't really release this album. This was the Simple Times album. They can't really release that without a radio hit. If we're going to put all this money into it, radio promo. And I was like, all right, fine. So I gave them all their money back that they gave me. I hadn't spent any of the money they gave me on the deal. I spent a tiny bit.
Sure.
Like on rent.
But to give them it back, say, hey, wow, that's bold, right?
Yeah, I lost about a month's worth of sleep over that decision, but I'm glad I did. And so I was just like, I'm not going to be able to sleep at night if I'm letting these people tell me who I'm supposed to be. I think I was by that time I was like 31. I was an adult. I wasn't like an 18-year-old kid being like, ooh, you're going to, I was just like, I'm happy already.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave them all their money back and I started making indie records.
And that second record, the one that they quote unquote, they didn't want, though it didn't have the hits, had like one of the biggest songs you've ever done, right?
My most popular song. It went top 10 in 10 different countries, that song, I'd Rather Be With You.
Yeah.
And in America, it went number 1 on iTunes when it came out. And
that must have felt good. Aside from the fact that the song did so well, but just to kind of like.
That happened also because I signed to a major label in London. I signed to Warner outside. They were Warner outside of everywhere but America.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they were working it hard. And the guy who took over Warner at that time as the head of Warner, he signed me to an indie label, but he was upped to Warner, bought him out. And he's the guy who originally signed David Gray, Ray LaMontagne, Damien, all those 3 big singer-songwriters, and he exploded those records. Like David Gray's White Ladder that sold 20 million records. And
right.
It was called Fourth Floor Records, this label. And so I was like, dream label, signed to his label. And he was like, he got up to Warner, made CEO like a week after he signed me. And he was like, I'd Rather Be With You. I'm going to make that a radio hit. And he did.
Wow.
That's what a major label. When the head of the label goes in and goes, when Jimmy Iovine signs Lady Gaga and says, this is my number 1 priority. I mean, obviously Lady Gaga is extremely talented, but
sure.
Columbia did the same thing with Adele, the same thing, the same time they signed Adele. And obviously Adele's massively talented.
Right.
But they were like, they walked her into every radio station, was like, this is our number one priority.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I'm as talented as Lady Gaga and Adele. I just mean you have to have that kind of talent that they have, but you also have to have you have to have the head guy being like, this is my number one priority.
Right. And it does, and it works. And it works because, I mean, coming from radio, I know that they come in, I mean, the record people come in and then they can negotiate with the PD and say, okay, this is my new signing. This is my priority. Get them on the air. And then when your Christmas show comes around, I'm going to give you this massive artist from my roster of people. Right. Or that's kind of, they can.
And everyone says payola doesn't exist, but it just doesn't exist in maybe briefcases full of cash like in the 60s.
Exactly.
It's or cocaine. But like,
right. It's you'll give me this one and I'll give you that one. Right.
Yeah.
It's
I'll scratch your back if you scratch me.
Sure. And you see it every day. So
yeah. So people are always like, well, my mom, especially my dad, why don't I hear you on the radio station? Well, I'm like, because I don't have any major label president being like,
right.
Well,
walking me around, trying to trade me for whoever to be on their whatever.
And if you listen to Top 40 or Hot AC, because now Hot AC radio has become the exact same thing as Top 40.
Yeah.
It's a 12 song playlist or something that goes like Beyonce to Rihanna to Bruno Mars to these huge pop songs that are really upbeat and it's
they
like,
look at you in a 15-minute increment. It's off a quarter, and it's like, and that's why they'll play the same artists 3 times in 1 hour. Try
throwing one of my songs in between Rihanna and Beyonce and see how many people in their driving in their cars, change the channel because they want to listen to Beyonce and Rihanna.
And they want to listen to Beyonce every time they get in the car, and they don't care if it's the same song, which is,
and they also
blows my mind.
That pop feel,
Right.
And every now and again, a song like I'd Rather Be With You breaks through, like, or like Ed Sheeran's a perfect example.
Or Lumineers are pretty.
The biggest, musician in the world, basically. But he had to make his songs way more pop sounding than that first album he had.
Uh-huh.
Even though he had hits on that first album, it was like, he was like, I want to take over the world.
Right.
So he had to change his style a little bit and make his songs way more upbeat and he did. And it's exactly what he did.
Mm-hmm.
Until he was selling more concert tickets than U2 and the Stones.
Yeah, totally. I know he's like one of the biggest things in the world. I mean, as you just said, it's crazy.
He is the biggest thing. I mean, people, in terms of selling concert tickets, he is the biggest thing in the world.
Yeah, he sells them. He's sold the most.
He sells more concert tickets around the world than Coldplay, than like U2, the Stones, Beyonce. I mean, it's like it's insane.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just up there with a guitar and a loop pedal. It's just him.
It's crazy.
I mean, I've opened a couple of shows for him. It's like you're watching it going like, this is. I mean, he's insanely talented, but you're watching it going like, this something like this has never happened before.
Right.
It's usually, to do this, you have to have dancers. And I mean, it has to be like a show. Like it's crazy. It's him and a little acoustic guitar, like that costs like $1,000. And like, and you're just like, and people are going crazy. And you're like, oh my God, dude, you just changed the whole game.
Right. That is crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
And he used to come to my shows when he was younger. Like he was like, he just wanted to be Damien Rice. He wanted to be Snow Patrol. He wanted to be me. He wanted to be like, he just wanted that acoustic singer-songwriter thing.
Uh-huh.
And then was like, well, you know what? There's a ceiling on that. I don't know if theaters are going to do it. How about if I just sell out every football stadium in the world?
Right. That's funny. That is really funny. So what?
He's still the most humble kid you'll ever meet in your life. It's crazy.
The fact that he was in, I've never seen Ed Sheeran. His songs are obviously huge hits. The fact that he did that movie yesterday, the Beatles one,
Yeah,
and
it was Coldplay.
he's like the, you know, he's competing with the guy that's rewriting all these Beatles songs, and his phone rings and it's his song. Like, I thought that was so funny that he did that. Like he'll like the self-deprecating kind of thing that he does is really funny.
I think deep down, he obviously he knows he's talented, but I think deep down he can't even believe, like, what is, like,
what is
I'm
happening?
the biggest thing in the world. Like, I'm doing duets with Beyonce. Like, what?
Right. Yeah, just like I saw that scene in the movie, it still cracks me up because it's his own song ringing on his cell phone. Oh, hey. Oh man. So obviously that record Simple Times is gigantic, does huge. They totally
Whoa. That's relative. Gigantic is a relative term.
I don't know.
Insurance. So if you're talking about commercial success, there's nothing I've ever done that's been remotely close to being gigantic. But it was my biggest commercial success, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so the next record you put out was The Rock and the Tide. When I just
with a Danish rock band in London, it was like, fuck it, man, I'm gonna get an electric guitar and see what that's like, and play a live album with a Danish rock band in London and see what. And I turned it in, and even the people at Warner were like, no, this is not what we signed up for. Like, I just was like, well, I want to try something new. I just started out as a musician, and I was like, so, looking back on it, I mean, I'm always glad. I just make decisions based on in the moment. But I mean, had I really played the game a little bit more with the guy who took I'd Rather Be With You and made it a radio hit around the world, maybe I would have made and played more acoustically, and gave him at least like something a little bit more like that he could follow up with. I probably would have. So right after I told him, if you don't want to release The Rock and the Tide, I'll you just drop me, and we'll part ways amicably, and I'll release it on my own with an indie label in the States, and that's what I did.
And is that when you signed with Mom and Pop?
Yeah, I was their first. No. Simple Times, I signed with Mom and Pop.
Oh, okay.
But they, in America, they were I gave the money back to Columbia and then signed with Mom and Pop. They had never. I was their first signing. Like, they weren't a label yet.
Wow. And they have huge artists. I mean,
Simple Times was the first record they ever put out, and I was their first signing.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. That's so cool. I'm a huge fan of that label. They've had amazing bands come through there. Alice Merton was on them, even like Fiddler. They signed everything, like the whole Tom Morello. Like the scale of artists they sign is so cool.
Yeah, so that was mutually beneficial for both of us. Like, my record did well, especially overseas, and then so they had that, and then although they didn't really make money on that because Warner had me outside the States and Mom and Pop just had me inside the States. But either way, they didn't. It was a good thing for them to have a record that actually had some success as their first record they signed. But in terms of money, I mean, those guys, they were managing Metallica, so they weren't hurting for money.
Sure. And then that next record you put out, you had a chance to work with Janet Delvin, who I had a chance to interview, and she's fantastic.
I met her one day. She came to my hotel room in London, and we wrote one song. I had never tried to write a song for someone else before. And we wrote one song. I don't know whatever even happened to that song. I never saw her again. Never heard of her again, actually. I don't even
know.
Yeah, no. I've heard her name since you just mentioned it.
That's maybe funny.
15 years.
She put out this fantastic record last year, the year before, where it's basically like her whole life story, and she did this like long novel that kind of went with it. She's such a great artist. Yeah.
She was a kid. When I met her, she was like 15. I don't know. Like,
oh my gosh.
And I don't know.
Did the label kind of send her over? I'm curious to know how that all kind of came together.
Someone at the label. I was in London a lot making that Rock and the Tide record.
Mm-hmm.
And someone I don't even remember, it was so long ago. Someone must have been like, hey, this young girl we just signed, she's writing with all these people. Would you want to try to write a song with her for her album? And I was like, that sounds like an interesting thing. And I listened to one of her songs. I liked her voice. And we met like literally 3 hours, wrote a song, had a coffee, and was like, well, all right, good luck to you. I don't made the, I mean, she was a kid. Like, it wasn't like we were going to go hang out. Like, it was like, let's go get a drink.
Right.
So, and I just remember, I think I remember the song that we wrote together didn't go on her album. So I have no idea what ever happened to it. And never thought about it again, honestly.
That's so funny. It was she,
really,
like I said, if you have a chance to check out her most recent record, it's really good.
Okay. Now you reminded me of her. She was a really sweet kid. So I wonder, she must be like 30 now or something. So I don't know.
Yeah. She got sober. I guess she has a real drinking problem, and pretty much the record is about that. Yeah, it's an incredible story.
Well, I'm
it's like
glad I wasn't the one who bought her a drink when she was 15.
Exactly. Right.
Someone else offered her a drink after a writing session.
When did you had a chance? When was the Ellen DeGeneres? Because you got to promote her. You promoted a record with her, right? And then how'd you get to do her wedding? And did you just become fast friends with her?
I met her at a benefit in LA. I was sitting at the same table as her.
Oh.
And it was my Simple Times. That second record had not come out yet. And the first song off We Were Here is called Drenched World. And I was sitting at this benefit. I was like a +1. Like, someone brought me to a benefit. I was like, oh, sure, I'll sit and have dinner. And they said, Rodrigo y Gabriela is going to play. And I was like, oh, cool, I'd love to watch this. Then I was listening to them a lot, and they were awesome. And so I was like, I'll go to that. There was the Art of the Elysium. That's what it was for, this charity. So there's probably like 12 people, one of those big round tables. And there's a bunch of those round tables. She happened to be sitting across from me with her now wife, Portia.
Mm-hmm.
And next to them was Ryan Seacrest.
Oh, wow.
And
you got quite the table.
American Idol had used a few of my songs off that first album. Like when someone would, like a montage. I never watched American Idol, but someone told me like a montage would come off, like a sad montage, that they would show for one of the contestants, and they'd use one of my sad acoustic songs as score. Wow. Anyway, I guess Ryan and Ellen were like very close friends. They were sitting next to each other, and Ryan said, oh yeah, I know your music. We've used a few songs on American Idol. And I was like, yeah, that's right. And Ellen was like, oh, who are you? What's your music sound like? And right as she said, what's your music sound like, my song Drenched World, the first track off We Were Here, started playing on the speakers. Like, wow. Rodrigo started playing yet. And I literally was like, so serendipitous. And I was like, well, this is what it sounds like. I couldn't have scripted it any better. And she sits there and she's listening, and she's like, I love this. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. And she was like, you have to come on my show and play. And I was like, okay. And I just thought she was, being nice, or being like Hollywoody. I didn't.
Right.
The next day, my manager gets a call, and then she calls me and she goes, you're not going to believe this. Did you meet Ellen DeGeneres last night? And I said, I did. And she said, they have a cancellation at the Ellen show on the music. The band had to cancel. They need to fill the music spot. Can you get over to the Ellen show today?
You're like, yes.
And I was like, yep. Called my band. I was like, meet me at the Ellen show at the studio lot, like, whatever. We're like, go. We go over there for sound check. And I was like, what do I play? What should I play? I didn't have a single, like I played my song Today, which is on that record. Uh-huh. I don't know. I can't remember why my manager and I chose that song to play. I was already off Columbia and not yet on Mom and Pop yet.
Okay.
I was in the studio making Simple Times. So I was like, shit, what do I play? Like, I don't have any like upbeat songs for daytime TV. Like, they don't have songs like mine on these shows. But anyway, I sound checked that song today with my band. I look over and Portia and Ellen are standing by the cameras while I'm sound checking to tape the show later in the day.
Uh-huh.
And they're both with crying. And I'm like, oh my God, I look over my band and they're seeing this? Like, what's going on? This is crazy. And I basically finish the sound check, put my guitar down, and Ellen and Portia walk up to me and they go, actually, I walked up to them. My band's, putting down their gear. And I walked up to them and I was like, hey, nice to see you again. Thank you so much for inviting me to play. Like, it's so nice to meet you last night. And anyway, they were like, we've been wanting to get married and we don't know what we're going to do, but that song you just sound checked, we've never heard that song before. As you were sound checking it, they were crying, holding each other. And they were like, that's the song. That's what we want to walk down the aisle to. And I was like, okay. And again, I thought maybe they'll put the CD on and whatever.
Right.
I never think about it again, except, wow, how nice were they? And seemed so in love. And then I'm on tour basically like 3 months later. And my manager calls us like, you're not going to believe this. But Ellen and Portia canceled. They were going to have a huge wedding with like all the celebrities out in LA. They canceled it. It became too stressful. They were going to have Justin Timberlake do the whole thing because I guess they're close friends.
Of course.
And they were like, they canceled the whole thing. They canceled Justin Timberlake, everything. They wondered if they could fly you in to LA. I was in Salt Lake City playing a show the night before. Luckily, I had a day off.
Uh-huh.
They flew me into LA. I had to buy a suit. I had to like go buy a suit at the mall in Salt Lake City. There's nothing open. It's like a Sunday in Salt Lake City. I think I had to go to Banana Republic in the mall. Like at the time, I don't think I owned a suit, let alone whatever. So they basically said, we're getting married in our house, 20 people, just our family. Will you play like that song today and like 6 of your songs for us in my house? And I was like, okay. And I went, hung out, played 6 of my songs while they sat right in front of me and like cried. Like,
oh my gosh.
And I was like, I was so nervous. I was like, this is crazy. For just their family and Ryan Seacrest.
Oh, Ryan Seacrest made the cut.
There's literally 21 guests. Just their family. Portia's from Australia and Ellen's from New Orleans. And they were just so sweet. Anyway, she invited me later on to come back and not just play. When Simple Times was coming out, she was like, well, come on. And I played I'd Rather Be With You. And Today, she let me play 2 songs.
Whoa.
And sat me down on the couch for an interview, not just the music. And she was like telling the audience, and I love this. And she was telling the story about how we met. And then I came and played the wedding. And that time, Mom and Pop, they timed it perfectly to release Simple Times. And they said, so they timed it perfectly with the Ellen show. So obviously the next day, the Ellen aired, my album comes out and Ellen airs the same day. And so the album went to #1 on iTunes. And then,
wow. And
I never looked back, man.
We already talked about it real fast, but do you have any advice for aspiring artists?
Well, I give you one piece that I always say. They always grow into the gear that you buy. So you really love it. And you're like, you feel guilty if you don't use it and play it. And don't take yourself too seriously.